This is Animal Magic. I am Snodgrass, and today I'd like to share something else about elephants. There is so much that needs to be said right now. So many things that are pertinent and significant, maybe even something magnificent. I can't think of any examples in the news, but in a vast universe of possibilities, there must be something. There's a lot to say about what's going on in the world and in this country and in this community and in my intestines, but I don't feel like talking about any of that, and deep down, you don't feel like hearing me say it either. I truly believe that just as there are wackos spreading misinformation and hate, there must also be good people spreading truth and compassion, and I hope you've heard them say relevant things. Today, I feel like talking about elephants. I even thought about titling today's message Irrelevant, but I couldn't decide how to spell that in a way that the pun could blossom in the reader's brain with just the right comic timing. Someone heard that I would be speaking on this topic at great length, and they asked me, "Do you feel a special connection with elephants?" "No," I said, and when the heavy pause got a bit uncomfortable, I tried to reignite the conversation with a question. "Hey, elephants are mammals, right?" She answered with a question. "Do you think they hatch from eggs?" Our interaction sort of recovered. She told me a little bit and then recommended I read a book. This brief interaction will tell you all you need to know about the relative size and centrality of elephants in my mental universe. I spend more time thinking about Melissa Etheridge than I do about the entire elephant species. And she is not the center of my mental universe, just an example of one of the many comets and asteroids that pass through my mind every so often. Pondering this brief conversation about elephant babies, I must say, in my own defense, I really was about 85% sure that elephants are mammals. Also, technically, elephants do come from eggs, which I assume must be microscopic. And maybe I shouldn't do this, but I now invite you to make a mental picture with the following title: An elephant comes from an egg. And now another mental picture with this title: Elephants are mammals. Do elephants come from eggs? Or are they made of milk? Or both? With questions like these, biology textbooks are useless. We must turn instead to the Hindu scriptures, in which all things are possible, and the opposites of all things are also possible. The scriptures of the Sanatana Dharma, better known to us as Hinduism, are more vast and varied than the writings of any other religion. One of the ancient writings is called the Matanga Lila, meaning the playful treatise on elephants. In this we find that in the beginning, the great golden-winged sunbird laid the universal egg containing all matter of the cosmos. When the god Brahma broke this in two, he sang 7 songs over the soup inside, and from the half shell in his right hand, some of the fluid congealed to form a male elephant. As Brahma's song continued, 7 more male elephants emerged, and then 8 female elephants from the shell in his left hand. These 16 paired off into couples and used their combined might to hold up the sky. They are the pillars of the Indian universe. In another Indian creation story, the universe begins with an ocean of milk, and the gods churn this to make butter, from which they can mold various forms, like those butter lambs you see at the grocery store around Easter time. One of the first things they made from this congealed milk was a white elephant. In Indian religion, a white elephant, or an elephant with white patches, is like a walking rain cloud with a special ability to communicate with the waters of the sky. So when a white elephant is found, it must be celebrated, or else the monsoons won't come and everyone will die. But if you can keep the white elephant happy, it will signal its cloud friends in the sky to send rain for the crops. There is actually an annual holiday, one of the 10,000 holidays of the Hindu year. That sounds like a joke since the year contains only 365 and a quarter days, but we're talking about a religion with 3 million gods. So 10,000 is really a lowball estimate of how many holidays there can be. Anyway, one of the annual holidays, a sort of rain dance, requires the presence of a white elephant. And if one cannot be found, you can fool the clouds by slathering a gray pachyderm with sandal paste and then distract them by having men in women's dresses dance around it, making obscene gestures. If I were a cloud and witnessed this, I wouldn't squint to see if it were a real white elephant or a painted one. I would just give the people what they want. Returning to the questions, do elephants come from eggs? Or are they made of milk? Or both? The answer, or answers, are yes, and yes, and yes, and then some. But in the search for these answers, we stumble into even more questions. Let's start with the most basic question that's on every child's mind on the ride home from the zoo. How did the elephants lose their wings? This is a sad story, not a funny one, since all elephants had wings in the beginning and spent their days dancing gracefully among the clouds. Not big flappy ears like Disney's Dumbo. I mean real Pegasus elephant wings. The offspring of the first 16 elephants from the universal egg were a flock flapping around until one day they were migrating across the Himalayas and needed to rest. So they landed on a tree branch, but they were so heavy that the bough broke and they came crashing down on the ground. They laughed, brushed each other off, and merrily flew to find another tree branch to perch on. However, it happens that a wise old monk had been teaching under the tree, and several of his students were crushed under this branch and its avalanche of elephants. So when the laughing elephants wiped themselves and flew away, the old teacher cursed them. When the time came to fly from the second branch on which they'd landed, the flock was shocked to find that they had no wings. They had to climb down the tree, which is hard when you don't have hands, and painfully ironic when you have a trunk. And from that day to this, elephants have been forced to wander, grounded, trumpeting at the sky that they can't reach anymore. Like I said, it's a sad story. Not as sad as Disney's Dumbo, but I have nothing to say about that. As a scholar of different faiths, I take my vacations in India. I've never been there, but when I get bored of studying other traditions and stories, I take a glance to see what new ancient thing the Dharma can dazzle me with. Reincarnation is my favorite idea about the afterlife, and the one that makes the most logical sense to me, since I frequently feel like I've been left to pay the check for someone else's feast. If I ever did get reincarnated, I'd like for it to be in India, since it's a region and religion that makes sense, and people are handsome there. As to the question of whether I could believe in 6-armed gods and goddesses, I once did behold with my own eyes an unforgettable moment at a Melissa Etheridge concert when she laid down her guitar, took up some sticks, stood next to the drummer, and together they became like a single being with 2 feet and 4 arms. It was like a transcendent stampede of rhythm. So a 6-armed goddess sounds fine to me. That way she could play guitar at the same time. I don't have a lot of religious decorations in my office. There's a poster of the Egyptian pyramids, and the front Windows screen of my computer is also the pyramids. And there's a little mini statue of the pyramids on my turntable. The pyramid thing started because I'm a Pink Floyd fan. The poster came with my record of The Dark Side of the Moon, and I think that Pink Floyd lyricist Roger Waters really wants for me to ponder the pyramids. Plus, they fit in with my gloomy, pessimistic sense that many of us will spend our lives hauling stone for someone who's already dead and gone. Anyway, the single non-pyramid related religious artifact in my office is a small metal statue of the elephant-headed Indian god Ganesha. He's also on my record player and sort of counterbalances the pyramids. They remind me of miserable toil, and he reminds me not to take things too seriously. Ganesha is the good-natured god of prosperity. He's known as the remover of obstacles, but I'm not really sure if removing is precisely what he does. He has a pet mouse, or rat. He has overcome the elephant's natural terror of vermin, and he can ride this tiny creature like a sort of roller skate. The mouse, I've read, represents tricky problem solving. Like, there's food in the house, and this little critter will find a way to get it, regardless of the many dangers, toils, and snares. But some difficulties cannot be navigated through stealth, speed, and acrobatics, and when it comes to these problems, Ganesha is an elephant. He can stampede and trample his way through. Or, better yet, being a polite, playful, and pudgy guy, he can probably charm his way through. I like Ganesha. He makes sense to me. The pyramids make me think of working to pay for the good times had by a dead man. And Jesus on the cross makes me think of some other guy in the past, prepaying for me to have a good time, but wanting me to feel really guilty about it. And then I go to an Indian restaurant, and I see Ganesha standing by the cash register, smiling at me. I had a good time eating the food, and now I can pay for it. And I want to, so that the hard-working cooks and servers can afford to go and have a good time of their own. Good times are had, bills are paid, the universe is in balance, and we all get on with our lives. And you should always remember to tip the full 20% at an Indian restaurant, or else you might be reincarnated as a dishwasher for the next 100 lifetimes. Of course, that's an oversimplification. Anything under 20,000 pages is an oversimplification of the Dharma. The obstacle is karma. The solution is karma. It's complicated. But at least we've got Ganesha to remind us that a 10,000-year snakes and ladders game of karma can also be fun. As to the question of whether the elephant-headed Ganesha was born from eggs or milk, it seems like such a simple question, but in the vast and various realm of Indian mythology, there's always room for some interesting twist. The radiant goddess Parvati, one story goes, wanted the bathroom to herself. But her husband, Shiva, was always barging in without knocking. So the goddess rubbed her body down with dust, which mixed with her sweat, and then she clumped it off and molded the shape of a little guy. He was an ordinary-looking little guy, and she named him Ganesha, meaning guardian. Then Shiva came thundering home and went straight for the bathroom. He was in a real hurry, but this little guardian would not let him through. Shiva sent a whole army of demons to attack him, but the dutiful little dirt-clod guardian fought them off. So Shiva stormed off and told his brother Vishnu, who laughed and agreed to help. Vishnu created a vision of a maiden so statuesque, like ancient Indian statuesque, that the guardian turned to stare, and when he was distracted, Vishnu chopped off his head. But this made Parvati even more angry, and she launched on a furious, destructive rampage that threatened to destroy all of creation. Shiva had to think and act fast, so he grabbed the first animal he saw, took its head, and put it on the guardian's body. It's unknown whether he thought he could get away with this change or not, but surely Parvati would have noticed that her handsome little guy now had the head of an elephant. The elephant looks as different from humans as you can get while still coming from the same planet, and Ganesha occupies a unique space in between. But in the end, we're all made of the same ingredients: milk, egg, dust, sweat, and some hasty improvisation. That is a recipe for life, human and elephant alike. And as for the many significant things that really need to be said and heard right now, maybe our obstacles would look a little smaller if we took the occasional momentary glance to see Ganesha smile at us. Thank you. This is Animal Magic. This is Snodgrass. And, if you like this, please, whatever, click your approval and tell a friend. Have a good afternoon. Bye.